One of the most striking images to have come out of Iran in the past few turbulent weeks was that of a young woman called Neda, who was shot dead on the streets of Tehran. The images, which were first broadcast on the internet and then shown all around the world, show Neda lying on the ground in a pool of blood, and two men bent over her, trying in vain to save her life. And one of those men was Arash Hejazi, and he's with me now. He's back here in Britain. Arash, just describe for us, if you would, those turbulent events. It must have been a very, very traumatic experience for you. Could you just talk us through the sequence of events that led to Neda's death?
Well, I just can explain from my own what I saw and what I was part of. Well, our office is nearby the place that this terrible thing happened. We were there with some friends who had come over there to visit me because I was in Iran just shortly. And we hear that there were things going on in the street nearby and there were protests going on, so we decided to go out and take a look. We walked through an alley called Khosravi to the main street, Karagar, where the protests were going on, and the anti-riot police was coming by motorcycles towards the crowd. While we were staying there, Neda and that man who was with her all the time, who I thought was her father at the time, because they were so close, and later on I hear that he was her music teacher. We're staying there among the crowd. All of a sudden everything turned crazy, because the anti-riot police threw tear gases among people, and the motorcycles started rushing towards people. People ran through the Khosravi alley, we too, with my friends, and we ran to the intersection, the other end of the alley, an intersection with Salehi Street, which can be found on the map if it's necessary. And there people were just standing, just didn't know what to do. They either to scatter, to leave, or to wait and see what happens. We hear a gunshot. Neda was standing 1 meter away from me. I didn't know her. She was just another person in the crowd. And I hear the sound, and I asked my friend who was standing beside me, what was that? Was it a gunshot? And he said, no, they say they are using plastic bullets. And well, we were just standing there. All of a sudden I turned back and I saw blood gushing out of Neda's chest, and she was in a shocked situation, just looking at her chest, which blood was gushing out. And then she left her, she lost her control. We ran towards her and lay her on the ground. I bent over her, and I saw the bullet wound then, which was right in the chest, below the neck, and blood gushing out. My experience says that it was the aorta hit, and the lung as well.
Because you are a trained doctor, yes, although you're running a publishing business now as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a GP. I was a GP in Iran before I started this publishing house. And well, her aorta and her lung were hit by the bullet, and I don't know, because as far as I know, never an autopsy was performed on her. She was buried so fast afterwards, so nobody knows. But the bullet was, I can verify that the bullet came from in front, and it didn't leave from her back, so there were no bullet wounds, exit points in her back. It seemed, I have never seen such a thing, because the bullet, it seemed to have blasted inside her chest. That blood, and later on the blood exiting from her mouth and nose. I had the impression at the time that it had hit the lung as well. Her blood was draining out of her body, and I was just putting pressure on the wound to try to stop the bleeding, which wasn't successful, unfortunately, and she died in less than 1 minute. She was drained out of her blood.
Did you see, or did you hear the direction from which the gunshot came? Did you see who actually did the firing?
Well, things went in a chaos afterwards, because people, the man started crying, my child, my child. That's another thing that made me have the impression that he was her father. And well, yes, we heard the sound from in front of us, where we were standing. We had the impression that it had come from a rooftop. But later on, a few minutes later, because I was, when she died, they took the body and put her in a car to take her to a hospital or somewhere. I didn't follow them.
When you say they,
the people who were
around her.
Yeah, they just a car coming by, opened the door and offered them to take her away. They put her in the car and they just went away. So I don't know what happened afterwards, other than what everybody else has here. But afterwards, some people believe that it was they actually took someone with a Basij card, and they said that he was on a motorcycle coming from the other way, hiding in the corner. Some people shouted that we caught him, we caught him. People went towards him and they disarmed him and took out his identity cards, which was a Basij member. And he said he was shouting because people were furious, and he was shouting, "I didn't want to kill her, I didn't want to kill her." People were they just caught him and they didn't know what to do with him. Some people said, don't harm him, we are not killers like them. And well, they didn't know what. I was a few meters away watching. I was shocked, so I didn't participate in anything.
But you saw
I was just looking and watching, yeah. They said we can't even give him back to the police because they was just let him go away. So what should we do?
But they were certain in their own minds that this
he
member
was,
of the
yeah,
Basij militia
was the one,
yeah,
and he was shouting, "I didn't want to kill her."
You heard him say that?
Yes, I heard him, and I didn't. And he didn't say that I didn't want to. I wasn't the one who shot her or anything. He was just crying because he was afraid. I didn't want to kill her. So they let him go because they didn't know what to do with him. They should either harm him or give him back to the police. None of them would work in that situation, and they were afraid to expose themselves to the police. So they just let him go, and they took his identity cards. I don't know those people who took their identity card, but I know that there are people there who know who he is. Some people even, I noticed that some people were taking photos of him, but I don't know who they are as well. And well, I was covered in blood afterwards, so I just went back to my office to wash my hands, and when I came out, people had scattered, and that's what I've seen.
How did you feel after that event when you're back in your office and washing the blood from your hands? What were you thinking?
I was just, I can't, it's indescribable actually. I don't know. I've seen people dying many times. It's my profession. I've seen even people hit by a bullet, and while I was over her body, I didn't think about anything other than to do the things that a doctor has to do when he faces such a situation. But afterwards, I would just went to the bathroom and just tried to. I was washing my hands compulsively, and I don't know for how many minutes, and I was appalled. You know, after I stood up from, you know, when I stood up, when I realized that she was dead and there was nothing else I could do, I stood up, and all of a sudden a fear of death overwhelmed me, because I felt that she was 1 meter away from me. That bullet could have hit me, and that guy or that person who had shot her could have been still there. So it was the first time in my life that I really felt the fear of death, and I was feeling so bad about myself because I felt that I'm having this fear, and she's dead, and I'm fearing about myself and what's wrong with me.